So what exactly is orientalism? It's commonly brought up on the topic of negative stereotypes or designs about people in the Middle East, such as movies like Aladdin, in critique of badly done representation. Orientalism is essentially a colonist perspective on how we would view Asia and the Middle East, a way of seeing an exaggerated view of Arab people and cultures. So when compared to European cultures, it pushes really bad stereotypes that Arab culture is exotic, backward, uncivilized, or even dangerous. One of the most common responses to Orientalism, especially when put into popular entertainment media, video games, etc., is, why does it matter? It's just a game or just a movie. I'm going to answer this question first because I know if I don't, the majority of my comment section will just be that. This is a common argument I see in the Genshin Impact community when someone talks about why it would be cooler to have more characters with darker skin tones or how to better represent a culture. But here's the thing, media does in fact have an impact on real life. Saying fiction doesn't affect reality doesn't make sense, because by that logic that means conventions, cosplay, fan art, figurines, and conversation about your favorite shows with your friends wouldn't exist. However, those things do exist in the real world because fiction does affect reality. I mean, if it didn't, then I wouldn't have been giving these horrendous ass socks for Christmas. So when someone loves a game, show, or movie series, they want it to improve and get better. Telling someone who has genuine concerns about their favorite game to not ask for improvements and stop complaining is weird, because you're allowed to enjoy things while simultaneously being able to acknowledge what's wrong with it. I would actually argue it's the other way around. If someone never played the game before, I wouldn't trust them as much on how to improve it. It's really clear that the true answer is just stop addressing misrepresentation or racism and just ignore it. Since when other people complain about what they want the game to do, complaints like, oh, Rosaria's boobs are too small, the men should have more muscle, the resin cap is too small, the game should give more rewards, etc., people agree and no one tells them just quit the game. Yet when someone does the exact same thing except towards representation, like, oh, they should add more characters with darker skin, suddenly people get really mad for some reason, telling them that they should stop voicing their suggestions, which is so strange to have people upset over talking about having better rep, when those same people are silent about other complaints, like albedo should get fluffier hair, because it's essentially the same thing. People see a problem, they edit it, show their better version, and explain why it's better, except one is clearly more important than the other, yet gets more hate. But in conclusion, it's perfectly okay to analyze something you like and how you think it could be better. I've seen many YouTubers do that, so if people hate on me for this video but not others, it's gonna be really suspicious as to why you're upset. Now that we got that out of the way, let's get back to the main topic. Within the 7 regions located in the game, everyone knows which region each country is based off of, Mondstadt being Germany, Liyue being China, Inazuma being Japan, etc. And the community has been very easy in defining which nation is which country since there are cultural references from life. Yet when it comes to Sumeru, people guessed it would be based on South Asian culture and Middle Eastern culture, or it was just Persian culture, or that it was Turkish culture, but something comes really clear. Sumeru is not based off a singular country, but rather many places at once. And this is actually related to Orientalism. Works made with Orientalism tends to merge countries into one rather than highlighting them individually. An example would be Dori, who's supposed to be Turkish. But before I talk about the bad or stereotypical things about her, first I obviously need to provide proof that she's based on a certain ethnic group before I say she's Orientalist. My evidence that she's Turkish is first her clothing, and second her theme song. Of course, I know her clothing is not 100% accurate, as I have seen many Turkish people argue that her outfit doesn't look similar to the traditional Turkish clothing, rather just individual parts of it. Or that there's inaccuracy in places like how her hat is the male version, while the female traditional clothing looks like this. But others say it's fine and that she is good representation. So what I'll be doing instead is showing you guys all Dori's cultural elements, which cultures they're from, and then our conclusion on it. First, starting with the music. Not many people know this, but Dori's theme, Thank You for Your Generous Purchase, is inspired by Turkish music, and I'll explain why. Listen to this clip of her soundtrack. This sort of fast-paced beat is similar to halay, which is a traditional Turkish dance. I'll play part of the song so you can hear the speed. At the very start of the song, it's much more slower paced, but later on it speeds up in intensity. A lot of Turkish music is basically rooted in the idea that there's a rhythm and certain beats get faster as time goes on, and people also dance or clap faster along with it, which is a quote a Turkish user gave me when to describe how Turkish music is like. I just want to promote them because they made this adorable and well done Dori redesign, and I did have to ask some Turkish people while making this video to make sure my info was 100% accurate, so it only makes sense to give credit. As the reason I found this out was because many Turkish users were explaining how Dori's theme reminded them of Turkish music and weddings, which is why I started researching about it and listened to Turkish music for a few hours, and I discovered this interesting fact that at the beginning of Dori's theme, they added this horn sound. That's the sound of a zurna, which is an instrument that is used in traditional Turkish music. Even though there are a lot of problems with Genshin, I can't lie, they always do a very good job in the music aspect. I found it really interesting that Turkish people were able to recognize a style, which shows how representation can impact people as it feels very appreciative when done well. So please do not be disrespectful towards Black or other POC when talking about wanting representation, because it is actually something that makes people feel connected. Now this brings up an important topic, so why were some Turkish and Middle Eastern people not 100% bored with Dori? Well, even though she is Turkish, it's weird how they did not give her a Turkish name. Her full name, Dori Sangama Bey, is Persian. Of course, Bey is Turkish, but let's be real, no one calls Dori by Bey, which is why I'm going to be saying her name is Persian. Names in Genshin are pretty important because since we can't tell the ethnic features of the characters, obviously since it's an anime art style, we can also tell it based off the name alone. For example, all the Liyue characters all have Chinese names. Her signature dish is shomi the mora butter chicken. Butter chicken is an Indian food, not a Turkish dish, and Indian culture and Turkish culture are completely different and should not be mistaken for each other. Not to mention the stereotypical lamp that's put in her signature dish, her design, and attack patterns, which again is strange since Dori is Turkish. Even her fans that are super hell-bent to say that there's nothing wrong with her agree with me that she's Turkish. So it's odd to have a magical lamp as well as a genie in her design since she is not Arab. And lastly, the most important part, the main reason people are critiquing Dori's character is her personality. She's really greedy and loves money to the point where she actually scammed people for their mora, which is a pretty notorious stereotype of Arab people and even other minorities like Indian people to be scammers, which is pretty sad if you actually think about it. And the thing that sucks is that it's completely unnecessary. If you learn about her backstory, she wanted to make more money to help her family. It would have been more admirable if she earned all her money respectfully instead of taking it from others, since a character who works really hard without scooping low to harm other people's incomes to take care of their family would have been way better, since it would have matched her backstory about how she wanted to make money for others, not herself. Here's a summary chart of what we talked about, and as you can see, it's very obvious what to change in the inaccuracy part in order to make Dori the best character she can be. If Dori was more like this, she would be even better representation without putting others in bad light. The point is, Dori Sangmabe has a lot of potential, such as her theme song, yet it's upsetting that they mistaken a lot of things in the Middle East and South Asia to be Turkish when they're not, as well as stereotypes that are common about Middle Eastern people that they shouldn't have added. Now that you see it on a list, you can probably understand why people are saying she's orientalist, despite the fact that she does have cultural aspects, such as her music, that sadly not many people even know is Turkish. It makes sense that people dislike her stereotypical personality. And remember, I'm simply addressing the bad things and good things about her character. Once again, it's perfectly fine for me to criticize a character and acknowledge the bad things about them. People do it with all the Genshin characters. So put the knife down. Overmixing of cultures in media gives a big inaccuracy and weak understanding of these cultures, making people think that they're mostly the same or similar, which is probably how MiHoYo made these mistakes in the first place. In comparison to a different character, like Nilou, in my opinion she's a better done character from Sumeru. From her signature dish to the horns on her head, dress, accessories, as well as name are all Persian. Even her burst attack is a Persian dance, which is amazing because it's definitely not orientalist as they managed to focus on one culture while making a character, proving that they could very well do the same with Dori. The only problem that I could see with her would maybe be the fact that her clothing is obviously inspired by the whole belly dancer thing of the Middle East, which isn't very good as that is an orientalist idea, but honestly, I'm not going to pick on it too much since the majority of Persian people I've seen think she's great representation, and putting someone like Nilou next to Dori would diminish my point. So I'm just going to move on to my next point. We've been talking a lot about cultural mixing and orientalism and how people dislike it since these cultures are separate and not the same. But is mixing and representing different cultures into one place inherently orientalist? And the answer is actually no. A mix of different cultures into one place is not bad itself and can actually be executed well. How so? Well, I'll be using this example in Nintendo's recent Splatoon game. In Splatoon 3 in the introduction, you meet two characters named Shiver and Fry, and the city Splatsville contains lots of contrasting cultures matched together and skin rarity. Despite it being such a short song, Nintendo managed to throw in many cultural melodies too and represent so many people. For hell's sakes, they even called themselves the City of Chaos. So what makes Genshin Impact's big clash representation get hate, yet Nintendo's big bowling pot of representation get praised? I think most people have already seen Nintendo's Splatoon, but if you haven't, here's a clip from it. First of all, something that's clear right off the bat is that despite the fact that these characters are humanoid squid creatures, it's very clear which cultures that these characters represent. Even if you never did research, most people would only guess about these two choices. And that's interesting because it shows how their design speaks for themselves. Unlike some of the Genshin Sumeru characters, unless we have knowledge beforehand about these cultures or do multiple hours of research like I've done for this video, it's much harder to tell the ethnicity of the characters. An example is how I would have never guessed that Tighnari is based off African culture, specifically Amazigh culture, until after I googled it, whereas I do not need to do a deep dive to know that Shiver is Japanese. In conclusion, the individual characters are focused on one culture and are identifiable as those cultures, which makes those people feel represented. Hence why I've seen more people happy about Nilou than I have about Dori. Number 2. Another reason why there's a backlash in Genshin for combining lots of different cultures in one is because of their history. I'll give an analogy. Why do you think it was bad when Europeans represented the Middle East in an orientalist view in the first place? Because in the past, and still in the present, people treat, for example, Arab people really badly, which is how we're able to connect movies and media that America made to how our societies view these people in real life. When you have a history of harming minority groups and people from other nations just because they're different from you, it would be alarming to then see you portraying, for example, like indigenous people. There were many incidents of representing them as savages or uncivilized. Genshin already has parts in their past where they made a tan-skinned character lighter or has done some suspicious stuff, like when Carol from Genshin Impact bleached her skin so that she can be lighter because she's, I quote, darker than dark. Or when they designed Candace based on Kadake, who is an African queen, but they decided to make her much lighter. And before anyone argues with me that taking inspiration does not mean everything has to be exact, you have to think to yourself, why did they decide to lighten her skin from the original? Because it's obviously that they distinctively made the decision to change her skin tone, since those were the reference photos. It is weird to create a nation that represents a real country, but not make it accurate to what the people look like. And that goes for my third point. Splatoon did not have a problem with making the world with darker skin tones. Many of the main characters have darker skin tones, and it's only polite that if you use another group's culture, you shouldn't just take everything except conveniently exclude their color. In closing, Genshin has this sort of colorist mindset which does not leave the best impression on people, and I think the fandom should be more open for criticism, because in my personal opinion, they're very defensive over their favorite game. I believe that there's a lot of potential and always room for improvement for everything. So this video summed up some of my suggestions and criticism in which I think Genshin can improve on. Thank you so much for watching. This is the first YouTube video I made, so if you have any questions, criticism, or death threats, please comment them down below and I'll make sure to hopefully reply back to them. I appreciate the support and I hope you guys have a wonderful day.